All right, guys, so we are starting where we left off on the last video, which is basically Spring starts here, chapter 7, which is about Spring Boot and Spring MVC. So last time we did create a controller class, but to make it a controller in Spring, you do need to add the @controller annotation, and then basically that is what we need to do. In addition, we're going to do a request mapping, and we're going to go ahead and write home. Basically means whenever this gets mapped, whenever somebody puts in a HTTP request, if they use this mapping /home, which I'm sure you've seen in most websites, then it knows to call this method. So over here, the method is going to return the name of a view, which essentially needs to be rendered. And here we're going to return as a string home.html. And then so essentially when somebody puts address that says /home, it's going to be this port number, which is 8080/home. It's going to look for this method. This method is going to return the view name, and then the view is going to be rendered. So we have to create the view here, which is going to be home.html. And so now that we're here, if you put exclamation mark and tab, you're going to generate boilerplate code for HTML document. Here we're going to create a simple H1. We're going to call it welcome. Exclamation mark here, why not? All right, so now that we've done that, we should be able to run it here. Let's make sure it runs, and then we're going to try to execute this. Just want to make sure it's successful first. So okay, so we did get Tomcat started on port 8080 and the YouTube video started. So what we need to do, if we go here, we have to go to localhost 8080 because that's the port we're on, /home because that's the path that we wrote. And you're going to see here it says welcome. So basically, we know how to write this, but what exactly is going on underneath the hood? And so this is basically it. Again, this is from the Spring Starts Here book. This is chapter 7. So what's happening is a client goes on their web browser and they write our website's path, which is localhost 8080/home. First, they're sending an HTTP request. Java doesn't explicitly understand HTTP requests. In this case, we have Tomcat, who's going to take that HTTP request and spit out a Java representation of it. So that's what Tomcat does. And if you recall in the web starter, it does have a Tomcat dependency. So that's basically what it is. Takes HTTP requests, transforms it into Java, and then gives it to the dispatch servlet here. So what does the dispatch servlet do? So let's find out. Controller to call depending on. So basically it tells the dispatch servlet says, okay, based on this path and HTTP method, I have to choose the correct method to send it to. So if we look here, there's only one method, but there could have been multiple methods. Let's say, and this is not going to be too uncommon, but let's say we had another method and this method was called contacts, right? And obviously I'm getting an error because we don't really have this, but let's say you did have a contacts method. Whenever they send that path, the servlet will have to say, okay, is it supposed to go here or is it supposed to go here? Which one am I doing? So that's basically part of the servlet's job to find out which method it's supposed to go to, map it. And so after it does that, it goes to the controller, and the controller's job is to call the method. Now, when the controller calls the method, it's going to return a view. So here we have home.html, which is the view. So it gives that back to the dispatcher. The dispatcher now knows which view it needs to render, but it can't render it. It has to give it to the view resolver to render it. And so the view resolver takes that, it knows what it's supposed to render, and it returns it back to the dispatcher servlet. Then the dispatcher servlet gives it back to the Tomcat, which takes that code and spits it out as HTML, and that's when the client receives it. So basically, this is kind of the steps of what goes on underneath the hood. And you can look at this and it kind of makes sense to me, especially after doing it and then seeing it. But you can look it over. You can try adding different methods to it. So again, like we were just talking about, if I did add another one, which I could, let's say I did add that contacts, and then I wrote contacts, and then I wrote contacts, and then I created a new static page that was for contacts.html. And then again, I'm going to create that same boilerplate here. I'm going to say h1. I'm going to say, hey, contact me. And then I'm going to have, I don't know, let's say a paragraph tab and say, just a random phone number, 305-111, tech 1111. And so in this case, now, whenever somebody puts one of these two paths, the dispatcher is going to try to figure out which one it is based on the mapping. So based on the path, and it's going to say, okay, it should go here or it should go here. And then whenever the client does type it in here, so first of all, actually, let me rerun this. All right, let's make sure it finishes. So now I can write this, and instead I can say contacts, and it'll bring up this page. So basically that's what's going on in this stage, where it's trying to map the path and the request to a specific method. And then again, the method goes to the controller calls it, returns the view, and then the view gets sent to the view resolver, which gets sent back, and then it gets sent back again. So that's essentially, chapter 7 in a nutshell. And I am going to do chapter 8 next. And I do just want to get some feedback from you guys. I don't know if you guys prefer to just see the code part of it, or if you want me to explain some of the things that are going on more in depth. But I think I'm going to end the video here. Again, you guys can leave comments, likes, whatever. If you have questions, you can ask them. But I am going to do chapter 8 next after this. And again, this book is called Spring Starts Here, and I do recommend it. It's a pretty great book. It looks like this. And if you go to the Manning website, they do have a subscription service. I think it's like $25, and you can read their entire catalog of books to include videos as well. But this is going to conclude my video, so hopefully you guys enjoyed.